Dr. Masua Sagiv is scholar in residence of the Shalom Hartman Institute based in San Francisco Bay Area and the Koret Visiting Assistant Professor of Jewish and Israel Studies at UC Berkeley. Dr. Sagiv received the Israeli Hope in Academia Prize from former Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. She has formerly taught at the schools of law at Bar Ilan University and Tel Aviv University and was awarded the Gorny Prize for Young Scholar in Public Law. Her dissertation won the Ben Halpern Award for Best Dissertation in Israel Studies. Her book, Radical Conservatism, on the halachic feminist struggle in Israel will be published in Hebrew at the end of the year by Carmel Publishing House. It was published? We need to update that on your bio. Her book, Radical Conservatism, on the halachic feminist struggle in Israel was published. It is our absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Masua Sagiv to Holy Blossom as our inaugural scholar in residence for the Elaine and Marvin Givertz annual lecture series.
Shabbat Shalom. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome that I already received from this amazing community, which I had the absolute delight to know Rabbi Yael for a few years now. And thank you for the generosity of this Shabbat. The parsha of this week, Parashat Vayakhel, revolves mostly around the building of the tabernacle, building the Mishkan. It's so fitting that we are sitting in the Mishkan right now. So the Mishkan is the house of God while the people of Israel were in the wilderness. And mostly the parsha is filled with details of materials and details of protocols and details of measurements. But it also tells us something that I think is very, very important about the posture that we should have when we come to build our Mishkan, when we come to build our house, when we come to build our bait. Wisdom appears 11 times in the Parsha, and it makes sense. Because in order to build a very intricate structure, this is a structure that needs to be stable, but it's also a structure that needs to be movable when the people of Israel are going from one station to the other station. And it also needs to be worthy, right? Because it is the house of God. It needs to be respectable. So obviously, you need to be creative, you need to be professional, you need to be an artist, but you also need to be very, very wise when you come to build the Mishkan. But 7 out of these 11 times, it is mentioned that the people who built the Mishkan had the wisdom of the heart. They had heart wisdom. So I'll just give a couple examples. At the beginning of the Parsha, it says what we have is at the beginning, we have the instructions, and then we have the building, and then we have the actual Mishkan. It's also a part of a sequence of 5 Parshat who are dealing with the building of the Mishkan and the whole situation of the Mishkan. So it says, for example, and let v'chol chacham lev bachem yavou v'yasu et kol asher tziva Adonai, and let all among you who are wise-hearted come and make all that God has commanded. It's also when we are told about the artists who are leading, the builders who are leading this work, Betzalel ben Uri ben Chur and Eliav ben Achisamach. We'll return to these guys. God has filled them with chokhmat lev, with wisdom of the heart. And also the people of Israel were filled with wisdom of the heart. Now, there's something slightly peculiar about this term, wisdom of the heart, because it's a beautiful term, right? It fills us up. But usually wisdom comes from our mind, comes from our head. And our heart usually deals with our emotions and with our feelings. So what does it mean, wisdom of the heart? And why are the people who are building our bait, our Mishkan, need to be wise in their hearts? This expression, wisdom of the heart, also appears again in Proverbs, where it says, lechacham lev, to someone who is wise in their heart, we should call navon. We should call someone who's discerning, meaning there's something more than being just wise in having wisdom of the heart. And in the Gemara, in Masechet Brachot, the Gemara describes, in a slightly troubling segment, describes the quality of different organs. The heart is nice. The other organs, I don't recommend as a reading material. But it says, the heart, lev mevin, the heart understands. The heart understands. Understanding and discerning is deeper than wisdom. A person who's wise, if I'm being taught, if I'm learning something, I can understand it. I acquired knowledge, I acquired information, and that means that person is smart. But a person with understanding, or a person who is navon, who is discerning, understands one thing from within another, can see between the lines, can gain what was behind that something, beyond that information that was given. This is a pretty profound concept, because although wisdom can be attained through intellect, a person with understanding, intellect is not enough. You have to have something more. And in order to have a real connection with God, that's what the Parsha is telling us. In order to have real connection with God and the road to real spirituality, intellect is not enough. You have to have something in addition. Intellect is just not enough. And what is this that needs to be the extra? That's the wisdom of the heart. To be a person that is in the right place, a person that their heart is actually warm. And we need wisdom of the heart not only in our relationship with God, but also, and maybe mainly, in our relationship with each other, in our society, and in our community. In 1990, psychologists Peter, I'm probably not saying it's right, Salovey and John Mayer first explored and defined emotional intelligence, EI. EI, yes, EQ. EQ? EI? No, IQ is the intellect, and then EI, no, I think it's EI actually, emotional intelligence. And what they explained is, they said that it's the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. A few years later, psychologist Dan Goldman, who actually popularized emotional intelligence, he put it in a more practical terms, and he said that having an emotional, now I'm losing it. Having emotional intelligence is being aware that emotions can drive our behavior, can be really, really impactful, both for positive and for negative. And learning how to manage the way that these emotions, both our own and others' emotions, learning to manage those are a real trait when you deal with each other. A person with emotional intelligence takes into consideration the feelings of the other. As part of my considerations when I want to act, when I want to do something or to think about something or to reach a conclusion, I think about others. And I'm able to see others. There's research that shows that traditional wisdom, traditional intellect, right, IQ, it predicts success in academia, right, or academic success, learning success. But in fact, it does not necessarily predict success in work environments, and it not necessarily predicts success in life in general. What does predict success in general pretty well is your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, being aware of other people's feelings, being able to put myself in other people's shoes while balancing my own feelings, right? I don't want to erase my own feelings, but that is actually a good predictor of success no less than just being smart, than being very, very smart even. And not only in the workplace. A society whose members are aware of the emotional needs of other members of society, who are capable of empathy, who are capable of respect, is probably going to be both a moral society and also a society that is a better place for people to live in. In our societies right now, whether it's Israeli society, whether it's Canadian society, whether it's the Jewish society, we are really, really, really lacking in wisdom of the heart. We really are in need for people who are able to see the other's fears, to see the other's soul. And what's really, really striking is that in our Parsha, those people who are gifted with wisdom of the heart are those people who are worthy to build our house, to build our Mishkan, to build our home. And there's another interesting point about, and pretty relevant, I would say, about building with the wisdom of the heart. Netanel Elinson, who's an Israeli educator, but who's also a tour guide, he asks us to notice the places and the tribes from which the builders of the Mishkan was chosen. If you'll notice this, the Torah could have assigned the building of the Mishkan to one person and to one tribe. When we hear about Bezalel, he's like filled, he's got the whole package. He has everything. He's an artist and he's smart and he has wisdom of the heart. He could have done it alone. Why did the Torah need to bring another person to the project, another leader to the building project? But what we're hearing about these two guys is interesting. Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur lemate Yehuda. What was his tribe? Yehuda, Judea, right? And the other one is Eliav ben Achisamach lemate Dan, meaning he comes from the tribe of Dan. And Ellinson notes that one of the most ancient tensions in our history is geographic, because it's between, it'll be familiar, it's between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. It's between the coast or the plain and the mountain. It's between Dan in Tel Aviv, in the coastal area, in the plain, and Yehuda in the mountains. And what's interesting about these two is that it's a cultural tension between these two. The coast is open to trade, right? And it had the main road, the main trade road between Egypt and Babylon. And so the people there grew much more universalistic. And it's actually even more deep than that, because the plain is defensible, is defenseless. You cannot defend, you don't have the advantage of being high. The weapon of the people on the coast and the plain was actually their communication. Their ability to communicate, their ability to understand different cultures, their ability to trade with other people. That is what defended them. As opposed to them, the people of Dan, the people of the coast, the people of Tel Aviv, as opposed to them, the people of the mountain, life on the mountain are not easy. The mountain is tough, literally tough. Just to overcome the natural forces of the terrain, to dig the wells and to live, it takes an everyday effort to live on the mountain. And if it needs, and people traditionally, the people of the mountain, I'm fighting nature elements every single day. I'm not going to be open to different trends or to different cultures or to new cultures. And usually the culture there grew to be more conservative, more nationalistic, more particularistic. We see it in the United States as well, by the way. You will see that if you live closer to the coast, you are more likely to be more liberal. If you live more inland, you are more likely to be conservative. The geopolitical researcher Frenan Brodel wrote, urban civilizations in the lowlands has penetrated the mountain world at a slow pace. The mountain people either resisted historical processes with its blessings, but also with its burdens, or they accepted it with reservations. So the plain symbolizes universalism, whereas the mountain symbolizes particularism. And here comes our parsha. And the tribes that are used to represent the tension between our people and within our society are Dan and Yehuda. And those two tribes that had a lot of tension throughout our history, those two tribes are saying, or our parsha is saying, that the most central space of our being right now, the most sacred and important space of our being right now, the Mishkan, which is built by all parts of the people, and that we'll talk about tomorrow. It's built with the wisdom of the heart, with seeing each other's fears, and by literally seeing each other, because it is built by the two leaders who represent the tensions in our cultures, the tensions between our tribes, and the inner tensions of ourselves. Betzalel ben Uri ben Chor lemate Yehuda, ve'Eliav ben Achisamach lemate Dan. In order to create the house of God, in order to create our house, our bait, we are called not only to be smart and not only to be right. We are called to have wisdom of the heart, to see the other, and to work together with those people who we feel most in tension with. Shabbat Shalom.